So let's give it a few minutes to see if we can get anybody up into the live stream here. Going to talk a little bit about the supply and demand of things and how the people react to that. Um, the bullwhip effect. I mean, this is really what I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what's going on inside of the economy, especially when it comes to like the distribution networks out there. It's really difficult to understand what is happening when it comes to supply, demand, manufacturing, distribution, and then try to get this clear picture of what's going on. It's really difficult to wrap your head around all this. Now, I kind of broke it down to using a plumbing fitting to describe the bullwhip effect, because it just made so much sense when I used this particular plumbing fitting. So during the lockdowns, during the shortages, the disruptions that were taking place out there was a particular plumbing fitting that had come up in short supply. And now this plumbing fitting, it's pretty simple. It's just a rubber coupling with hose clamps on each end, and it's used for like a lot of times it's used in groundwork, like hooking up septic systems or joining two pieces of like pipes that are not the same, like plastic to cast iron or something like that. So these particular plumbing fittings, they would come up in they were pretty common, fairly cheap, but they came up in short supply. Now, I had a guy come in who was in desperate need of these things. I mean, he had just this one part that he needed to connect these two pieces of pipe together to finish the job and get paid. And it's like holding up thousands of dollars, this one little $10 part. So when it finally did come in, he was just like, he bought them all. He bought everything I had. And I'm like, hey, man, no problems here. I mean, I can get more. So don't you just need one? He said, yeah, but coming up in short supply is not something I'm going to do again. I'm just going to buy everything I have off the shelf, or everything you have off the shelf. Well, the next guy coming in looking for it, he ended up doing the exact same thing. Well, now the computer algorithms out there, they don't know that these people were like in a panic buy. They didn't see that at all. All the computer algorithm sees is that you're constantly out of stock on these things. So it puts in a bigger order because you need more on the shelf. Well, I think if this is the same thing that happened to many stores out there, then the computer algorithm sees, like at the distribution networks anyway, sees like this huge overwhelming consumer demand that has taken place. And so now all the way through the distribution networks, all the way up to the manufacturers, they're seeing these orders that are quite bigger than what they would typically be, considering that the customer at the far end of the line is buying them up in a panic buy simply because they don't want to be out of stock again, when typically they would only buy one. So this created a flood of new merchandise coming into the system that really was meeting an overwhelming consumer demand that just wasn't there. And this is what a lot of people are now starting to experience. I mean, you can see it in the warehouse. I'll see if I can find the link to it, and I'll put it down in the description after I upload this video. But even warehouse capacity is now filled to the brim, and the retailers are having to discount those items dramatically in order to get that, get those items out of that warehousing space. And this is something that we had talked about quite a bit on this channel leading up to this, because be, since the pandemic had kicked in and the distribution network was so deteriorated, that getting stuff just in time delivery wasn't happening. So you had to store this stuff closer to the facilities or closer to the stores. And that's where these warehouses really started to come into more use here over the last couple of years. The only problem with that is that the distribution network is the most efficient when you have a just-in-time delivery. Although it's very fragile, it's the most efficient. It's going to be the most cost-effective. So when you have all this stuff sitting in warehouses, or you have the ability to do a just-in-time delivery, guess what's going to be used? The just-in-time delivery. And then the warehouse space ends up costing that much more. So this is part of the problem that we're experiencing within the retail right now, is that they don't need the just-in-time delivery because they have all this warehoused stuff that they're now paying interest on, essentially, because it's sitting there. And this is adding to the inflation costs that are going to the retailer. Even though they're trying to drop these prices to move that stuff out, it's still added input costs, having to store it and, distribute it and keep it. I mean, for every day that merchandise sits on the shelf and doesn't get sold, the merchant usually is paying an interest on that stuff. So if it's just sitting around, it's costing money, and that ends up being input cost going into the inflation. So I really wanted to talk about the eggs though, because this is something that is pretty interesting. I tried to find I had a little video link of an egg farmer from the UK complaining about like not getting paid. And it was something really interesting because he really broke it down pretty good, talking about how the added input cost into egg production was not leaving them with a whole lot of profit when they ended up selling it to the stores. And what this egg farmer was complaining about was that the stores were not paying them for the eggs, that the added input cost and then the price that they were getting for the eggs wasn't leaving them with any profit. And they're just like, so what do we do? If we can't profit, then there's no point in even producing anymore. And so what I'm kind of assuming on this, and I don't know this for sure, but what I'm assuming is that the egg farmers had a contract, right? Because this is the way most commercial farming goes, is that they have a contract to supply eggs at a particular price. And that way everybody within the distribution network knows exactly what they're going to get paid or how much they're going to have to pay. And the farmer knows what they are going to get paid. Now, if the farmer can produce those eggs at a cheaper price, he gets more profit for it. So this is typically how like most farming ends up going. And I'm not saying that's the case for this particular egg farmer, but I'm just assuming it's something very similar to that, and that he's contracted to sell eggs at a particular price. And although the added input cost is now moving into the cost of the eggs, it doesn't leave him with any room for profit. So this is really where the problem starts to come in, is that even though it's a short time, right? The contract may end and then you can renegotiate for higher prices or something, but you have a time in there in which that you have to wait for that contract to be fulfilled or to run out. In that time, how likely are you to invest into your farm? Like how many more chickens, how many more hens and pullets are you going to buy to replace the ones that are needing to be replaced? Because really a bird lasts for about 2 years. I mean, at least this is the experience that I had when I was raising birds for eggs. And so after about 2 years, you need to replace those birds or else your production is going to drop dramatically. And this is the situation that you're in, is that you're not getting paid for the eggs. So why would you invest into more hens? See, that's the problem, is that it creates a gap in production. So it's not necessarily like, money printer go burr, prices go up. It's that the severing of the supply chain and the lack of availability and then the added input costs going into those eggs, which would be inflationary, right? However, that right there created the gap in production. And that's what we are seeing in a lot of stuff. I mean, including lumber. I mean, the reason why I'm able to call this stuff out is because that's exactly how it happened in lumber. And it's going to happen like that with a lot of stuff out there. I mean, people told me I couldn't look at lumber for everything that's going on in the economy. You're right, I can't. But lumber tells a really good story. And as far as the distribution network goes, I mean, lumber tells an incredibly good story. So following lumber is really where, like, I have been able to see a lot of the stuff that a lot of people weren't calling out. I mean, I was able to see it because I was recognizing it from the lumber industry and then applying what I saw to other things that were going on in the economy out there. One of the things, for example, like right now, we have a lot of mill curtailment taking place within the lumber industry. I mean, it's like it seems like every day I'm reading about another mill that's announcing another curtailment. And if you go and you look at some of the lumber prices right now, they are under the 500 per thousand, which is what I said is going to be needed in order for these mills to stay profitable. I mean, if it's under 500 per thousand, the input cost that is now going into production of lumber doesn't leave them with a whole lot of profit. So they just quit making it. And right now, I was just talking with the lumber buyer here from my yard that I work at, and he said that he had a hell of a time trying to find a unit of 2x4/8 standard and better. Right? The most common piece of lumber that you could ever possibly find inside of a lumber yard. We're having trouble sourcing out one of these units. Now, he did find some out there, but it was crap. It's like a really low grade, and we try to carry a higher grade for our customers because, well, higher grade lumber is better lumber, and they're willing to pay a price for it to have a better grade lumber, and that's what we typically carry. But we can't find that higher grade lumber right now. And this is something that I had mentioned that was going to be taking place. I mean, we had started talking about these mill curtailments months ago. And I said at some point they're going to tighten up the inventory. You're going to find shortages starting to happen again. And then the prices are going to start shooting up. We're just now starting to experience some of that stuff. Now, how much this carries on, who knows? I mean, we got to see what the future is going to be like, whether the home builder demand starts to pick up or if there's more mill curtailments, or who knows what's going to happen. But in my opinion, right now we're sitting on depleted inventory. The prices are just ready to start bouncing, and if you get even a little bit of demand going into lumber, like from the home builders or something like that, it's going to be zapped. It's going to zap out the lumber, and there's going to be nothing left. We're going to go right back into the same situation we were in. Well, maybe not the same situation. I don't think it's going to run back up to that high, like 1700, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it run up to 800, 900, maybe 1,000 or something. Who knows? All right. All right. All-nighter. When I walk forward, I follow lumber. All right. Looks like more rain is coming for the West Coast. Just had one roll through in the middle of number 2, but another third is right behind it. Yeah, I mean, it's constantly raining here. I don't even like pay attention to the rain anymore. Like, I don't even know. Like, people say, is it going to rain today? I don't know, probably. You know, I mean, you just don't even stress it. You just assume that it's going to. Lumber prices starting to creep up again. Yeah. Can someone get rid of this guy, please? Well, hey, why don't we just get rid of you, bro? Here we go. Let me see. I can help you out with that. Let me just see if I can do that. Oh, well, never mind. I can't get you. Why can't I get rid of? Oh, there we go. You want me to get rid of you? I'll give you another minute. We'll try that again. All right. I see a lot of let's see, a lot of the futures, including lumber, getting up a little. You think that will reflect a little more in the inflation next time? No, I think our inflation scenario is really probably coming down in a dramatic way. I think probably the biggest issue that you're going to find is that there's going to be a massive unemployment coming at some point. That's really what the Federal Reserve is looking for. They're trying to kill the consumer. I mean, it's not, once you read Cantillon's essay, you really understand it, but it's not so much the amount of money that's in the system that creates the prices that go up. It's the consuming that takes place. More money creates more consumption, and more consumption is what drives the prices up. And so right now the Federal Reserve is going to pretty much kill consumption. They're trying to raise the interest rates to the point that they can cause a bunch of layoffs to happen. They're trying to knock the heads off the zombie corporations, and that's really what's starting to take place. I mean, you can see it happening all over. They knew when they set up them special purpose vehicles and started the campaign to get the corporate debt facilities up and running and getting everybody to like front run them by buying into that corporate debt. They knew once those corporations had that cash in hand that they were going to have to do something with it. And what else is there to do besides expanding your company with either buildings or equipment or hiring people? And that's what they did. They hired a bunch of people. And it just seems to me like it was so perfectly well played out that they could get those corporations to hire a bunch of people, and then you have this unemployment rate that is just like ungodly low and a labor market that is just incredibly tight. And what does that do? It drives up the wages, which is something that they were trying to do. I mean, if you go back and you look at some of the statements coming from the Federal Reserve back in like 2017, 18, they had repeated that over and over again, that they needed to figure out some way to get the wage growth to pick up, especially on the lower end. And now, how do you do that? Like, how do you just go and make people like, have higher wages for the employees out there? You can't just make corporations do it. But if you create a situation in which that there is nobody available to work because everybody has hired everybody that's available, well, then you have no other choice but to raise the wages in order to be in that competition to attract the workers. And so, I mean, it seemed pretty well played out that if you wanted to raise the wages, that's how they did it. And it seemed that special purpose vehicle with the corporate debt lending facility was just the perfect gimmick for it. Hey man, you see any chance of smaller homes getting built? No, and I don't. And the reason why I don't see the smaller homes being built is because everybody that I've ever talked to who builds homes say they have to build the biggest and most expensive home they possibly can in order to get the profit margin out of it. Building small homes just doesn't have enough profit inside of it, like building, the 1,600 square foot ranch style homes just doesn't cut it for most of the builders. And so they end up going for, because it's a lot of it has to do with like the other added costs, like the land cost, the labor cost, the permitting cost, everything that goes into it. So by the time you go to build this house and you have all these added costs go into it, you have to sell an expensive home in order to get the profit margin into it. Raise wages so even more money can flow in landowners and finance. That's exactly right. It would flow to the landowners and financing it. I mean, you know, uh, it all comes down to the property owners. I mean, a lot of people want to blame like a lot of things going on as far as like, the condition that you live in. They blame like politics for it. But you can travel around this country and have different types of communities, whether it's conservative or liberal or Democratic, Republican minded, libertarian minded. You can travel all over this country and find all sorts of different communities to be part of or to live in. And the reason why those communities are that way doesn't have anything to do with politics. It has to do with the property owners that live there and the taste and the likings of those property owners. Once they bring in what it is that they like to their community, then they vote for the things that they like as well. And that's the reason why you have some of the regions are conservative or liberal, is because of the property owners that happen to live there and their taste of what they like. I guess if you want smaller homes, you have to rent. If you want a smaller home, you're probably going to have to build it yourself. Canada is lowering lumber production, was in the news. Yeah. And Canada is like, they're the sensitive ones too, because like any kind of issues that take place, the British Columbia area is very sensitive to it. And the things that happen in the British Columbia area impact the rest of the lumber market. Now, BC is high cost, high output, right? So they produce a ton of lumber up there. But they're also the high cost producers. So it costs more to produce and they produce a lot of it. So when the price of lumber goes down, these guys get hit with something it's kind of interesting. Canada gets hit with a double whammy when the prices are up and then they fall. Because when the prices are up, their government readjusts their what they refer to as stumpage fees. And so if the lumber was up at like say 1,700 per thousand, then they adjust the stumpage fees to that 1,700 per thousand mark or whenever they establish it. But then if it happens to fall, like the price of lumber falls, they don't adjust the stumpage fees, right? Not for like, I think it's 6 months. Every 6 months they adjust it. So as the prices of lumber fall, the stumpage fee stays the same. So that's added input cost going to the mills. And this is something that Canada has to deal with. So as the lumber prices are coming off their highs, the British Columbia mills are dealing with added input costs due to those high stumpage fees. And at the same time, they're not able to sell that lumber for the higher price that the stumpage fees were adjusted to. So they have time in there in which that they just get hammered, nailed, right? And then it works the opposite way as well, because when the prices go up, if the stumpage fee happens to be down at the time, then they make a bunch of profit inside of that. So it works both ways on it. But right now, yeah, British Columbia they're shutting a lot of their production down right now. All right, let's see here. A smaller home can be affordable in some areas of the country. Hey, all-nighter. Let's see here. Evening all. Landlord property owners have destroyed the housing market. Well, I mean, I don't know. Landlord property owners have destroyed the housing market. I don't agree with that, man. I don't agree with that. Like, that's not how this goes down. What's happened here is that you have a cyclical event that has taken place where the new money has come in and has driven people into the two classes, right? You have the rich and the poor. And the further this continues, the worse it's going to get. And there's no reversal to this. This is really where I think a lot of people are misunderstanding like how politics can fix this or something like that. It can't be fixed. It's a cyclical thing. It's going to continue. And the moment that you try to fix it, people don't want to deal with the pain. They don't want to deal with the pain of what it takes, because it all comes down to the new money flowing in. So as the new money starts to flow into the system, the people who have access to that money first, they spend it at face value. They get to enjoy the added like benefits of having this new money. They get to spend it at that face value. But as that money starts to enter the system, the people at the very end of the line, when they finally get it, the consuming has picked up so much that the prices are now moved up. They have to deal with these added prices or the increased prices, even though they're at the very end of the line. Their cost or their standard of living doesn't increase, right? So as this new money pours in, they get poorer and poorer and poorer as this happens, unless you can get out of that lower end. You got to move up and be one of the first people who have access to that money. If you're one of the first people who have access to the money, well, then you're on the right side of the wedge, right? So if you're on the right side of the wedge and you're getting that money first, you're buying into luxuries, you're buying into all the awesome stuff that is out there. So what ends up happening is you're driving in ever increasing amounts of foreign production, because you're competing with the domestic manufacturers who are getting expensive. As that continual pouring in of foreign manufacturing drives out ever increasing amounts of domestic manufacturing, you're going to find that the people at the end of the line are getting further and further away from the people who have access to the money first. And this is that wedge that is being driven. And no matter what you do to try and fix it, because fixing it means that the people at the end of the line have to do more for less. That's what it means, right? The people at the end of the line do more for less, because the people at the top, they still get their money. They're like, their standard of living might be able to drop a little bit, but they're still the first ones getting the money. They're the ones who are going into luxuries. They're the ones who have the standard of living. It's the people at the end of the line who suffer the most. So if you want to fix the situation and not have that new money pouring in, the people at the end of the line suffer by far the most, as they have to do ever increasing more with less. Until that new money completely turns off and everybody falls into poverty, there is no fixing the system. The only way to really deal with it is to ever increasingly pour more money into the system, and hopefully it gets down to the end of the line where their standard of living can be somewhat had. And this is one of the reasons why they actually injected stimulus into the economy, is to try and bypass that flow of currency that starts at the top and runs to the bottom. They tried injecting it right into the bottom. And what did that do? It boosted consumer consuming. Right? And so they took that stimulus, went and consumed with it, drove the prices up real high, and now it's all gone. So what's going to happen? Now they have to fix the inflation scenario, this overwhelming consumer demand that was created with the stimulus. They have to fix it by cutting off consuming. And if you cut off consuming, that's the jobs. If you don't consume, if you're not making transactions, then you're not making payments to something, then there's not a guy on the other end of the line saying, how do I get this money? Right? So that's really how this is going down, is because of that new money flowing into the system and driving people into luxuries and separating from the rich from the poor and lowering the standard of living of everybody at the bottom of the line. Yeah, that's how it goes down. I'm a landlord that don't get paid and get asked for repairs. How great is that? Then what are you doing being a landlord? If you're not getting paid, get out, man. I mean, what's the point? I mean, the whole point of being a landlord is so you can get paid. I mean, it's the property owners. Then get out. That's all I could say, man. Canada is lowering lumber production, was in the news. We already read that one. All right. In Colorado, high egg prices collided with low lumber prices equal lots of new chicken coops. This is just yeah, I could see that. I mean, I heard a bunch of people talking about raising birds this year. I mean, I'm one of them, but I tried to do it last year, but the raccoons ate my birds. All right. Really no point between BlackRock as a landlord and you, to be honest. No? All right, new money. I'll take old money also, yeah. Get paid for taking the risk is only natural. Not good. What is that? Trial legend? I don't know what that means. Sell to BlackRock. Let them feel the pain. Have 4 chickens coming in March. Yeah, chickens are a lot of fun, I mean, even if you're not doing it for the egg production or something, just having, the chickens for a hobby is really it's a lot of fun, especially if you have the rooster crowing in the morning and you got hens and they're like just running around the yard and stuff like that. I mean, it's a really fun feeling, and especially for the kids, they just absolutely love it. All right. Aquaponics, damn, auto miscorrect. All right. Eat the raccoons. Yeah, I probably should have. All right. A guy next door will be a lot more lenient on his tenants than a big corporation. Yeah, I mean, whether that's a good, bad, or ugly thing, I mean, I know like at least for like the quality landlords that I seem to come across, I mean, they all see, I mean, they do have a care for the people who live there at their property. I mean, they want them to be in a good place. They want them to be able to, make their payments and be happy and, not have any issues with it. Last thing you want to have is a pissed off tenant who's going to trash your place before they leave or something like that. So having a good relationship, between the tenant and landlord, that's a pretty critical thing if you're going to be a landlord or, even rent somebody's property or something. Bantams are cute. Yeah, they are. What's your thoughts on single tax only on land? To be honest with you, you really don't want to ask me about taxing because I hate taxes. So I have a bad attitude towards taxes. The market is at greed mode again. Very fickle. All right. What's your outlook for silver in 2023? I tell you, I'm not really like the type of person who wants to pump up silver and like, get you all like, hey man, so silver's going to be the place to be. It's going to like shoot up to, new all-time highs and everybody's going to be driving Lambos who buy silver. I don't play that game. Like I don't even really buy silver with the idea that I'm going to sell it into the future. That was somebody else who was just like, yeah, all your silver, you just want to get rid of it for dollars in the end. And it's like, no, I really don't. Like, I don't. Like, I have no desire to sell silver at all. I have it for an insurance policy. So if I do sell it, it's because I'm in bad times, right? So no, I don't want to sell silver ever. However, there are a lot of people who want to take advantage of like the idea that they can make money on the price moves of silver. And what I feel is going to be taking place in 2023 is at some point we are going to find where there's going to be a high demand for dollars. And I couldn't tell you if that's going to be 2023 or later or what. But at some point there's going to become I wouldn't necessarily call it a liquidity crisis, although it could turn into a liquidity crisis. It's going to turn into a major liquidity concern as the Federal Reserve continues with their monetary tightening. Now, you have to think, this is pulling money out of the system. This is where they literally take dollars out of the current, out of the monetary policy and destroy it, right? That's like what the monetary tightening is all about. Now, granted, the Federal Reserve doesn't necessarily like take dollar bills out of the system. They're just taking reserves off the big bank's balance sheet. But anyway, set it aside. Monetary tightening is destroying the currency or taking the available currency and diminishing it. So as we already kind of talked about from some of the other things, there is demand for dollars outside of this country. There's debts that have been issued by corporations and nations that have pretty much written bonds that are due in dollars, in US dollars. They don't have anything to do with our banks. They don't have anything to do with our government. They don't have anything to do with our corporations. They have nothing to do with Americans. But yet these debts are due in dollars. Now, as these debts become due and the available dollars out there are diminished, that's going to create the liquidity crunch, like the demand for dollars out there in order to pay these debts. When this begins to happen, interest rates will continue to rise as people are like, hey, the dollars are hard to get, right? Interest rates are going up. This particular scenario is going to continue to put pressure on people selling off assets to get the dollars to pay off their debts. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not excited about Bitcoin today running up as high as it is. I think Bitcoin's going to go lower at some point, lower than it even has been today. I think at some point you're going to find things like that are typical safe haven assets like U.S. treasuries, like land in the United States. Even like I wouldn't necessarily put housing into it because housing right now is just so like crazy, but just like raw land. Some of these things are going to find themselves like for sale. in order to acquire the dollars needed. That is the situation right there that I feel that could cause people to be like, man, I have no idea where to go. They're scared of the dollar. They're scared of the treasury. They're scared of land. They're scared of stocks. They're scared of everything. And that leaves nothing left. Absolutely nothing except for the precious metals. Now, again, like I'm thinking at this time, like a lot of people might be looking towards Bitcoin at this, but I'm thinking this is the liquidity crunch that is really driving people into cash. And if it's so bad that they're actually dumping their treasuries out too, I can't imagine them wanting to get into Bitcoin, right? I would assume that it would be gold and silver and then maybe land. But I think even if land starts to go too, then gold and silver is going to be the only thing left. So that's the kind of situation in which that I would see like silver really running up to like those crazy all-time highs, or, you know, just crazy numbers. It would have to be something like that. If it doesn't take place like that, there is way too much manipulation within the system. There's too much paper silver out there to think that it would ever go up to anything that would be like considered realistic. Like the 10-to-1 ratio to gold, like being $190 an ounce would seem very reasonable to me for silver to be at right now. But because there's 100 paper ounces of silver, or even more, I don't follow up on the paper silver derivatives out there, but considering that there's 100 ounces of silver or more for every ounce of physical, I just can't see how it is that the price of silver could ever skyrocket so long as that's being played. If there ever came a time when everybody started dumping out the paper silver and started taking possession of the physical silver, then that might be a situation in which that we would see silver prices run up again, because what you'll find there is that there's going to be a manufacturer out there somewhere who's going to need physical silver to make their cell phone or something, and they won't be able to acquire it. And it won't matter what that spot price is or what the paper price is or anything else. They're going to pay whatever price they can to get the physical so that they can make their product. And that kind of situation, who knows where prices could go to, because then it would be a real like free market demand for it. And considering how little amount of silver actually goes into making like a cell phone, I think silver prices could go really high if the manufacturers come up in short supply of it. So those would be the two scenarios in which that I would see silver moving up, but I just don't see it. Like, I think silver is a slow grind. I think it's a great insurance policy. You know, you just grab a couple of ounces a month, you throw it in the box, you forget about it. You know, if you ever come into some hard times, you know, you can pull that box of silver out and trade 165 ounces for a Tahoe, because that's what I did. You know, I mean, that's how I ended up using my silver, but that was the only time I had ever used it. It was like an insurance policy. So, you know, I don't know, like 2023, I wouldn't be too terribly excited unless we start running into, like I said, a liquidity crisis, or somehow that paper manipulation game was, like, say, circumvented by the manufacturers just going straight for physical, or people dumping out paper and buying physical, something like that. Alrighty. Boom. Food for thought. Shibi burn rate up 1100%. All right. I thought it's like mining ratio to gold is like 7-8 to 1 of gold. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like historically they pulled it out of the ground at like somewhere around 10 to 1 ratio. So that's kind of what I go with, but it could be 7 to 8 to 1. I mean, if you think about it, 50% of most of silver goes to manufacturing, goes to industrial purpose, never to be seen by an investor, never to be turned into a bullion coin or something like that. That really leaves for investment purposes 5 to 1 to gold, right? I mean, there's really not that much physical silver out there when you think about it. It's just the fact that nobody, like, I know a couple of people who are actively buying silver, but just about every single person I know doesn't own silver. They don't even think about owning silver. They have no anticipation of buying silver. I mean, if everybody, put it this way, like, I don't know, what is silver production right now? 900 million ounces or something like that? There's, what, 365 million people in the United States. If everybody in the United States went out to buy just 2 ounces of silver, just to get physically grab 2 ounces of silver, that would pretty much eat up the entire world production of silver for a year. If every American went out to just get 2 ounces of silver, we're not talking Canada or Mexico or Europe or Russia or China or India or anybody else out there. We're just talking the United States going after 2 ounces per person. So if you can imagine that the rest of the world just wanted to get a hold of 1 ounce of silver, just 1 ounce each person, there wouldn't even be nearly enough to go around, and the price of silver would just absolutely skyrocket to the moon. But nobody wants a single ounce of silver. Right? Nobody even thinks about buying a single ounce of silver. All right. Copper. I have a little bit of copper bullion too. All right. Let's see here. All nighter. Good stuff. Start buying. All nighter's awesome. All right. How's the fam during this harsh weather? It's affecting much in your area. Well, the harsh weather really doesn't seem that bad to me. I mean, it's pretty typical. It's cold, wet, and rainy all the time. That's the way it is, And the family, I think they really enjoy the sunny days a lot more, because when the sun comes out, man, they do not want to be in the house. They want to get out. And so I think that actually is kind of beneficial in a way. It's just like it makes you appreciate the better weather more. All right. Cool, guys. I'm going to give it like another 10 minutes or so, and then I got to go pick up my boy from gymnastics. But I really appreciate everybody hanging out here. We got 196 of you, 70 thumbs up. I always appreciate it when you hit the thumbs up when you come into these live streams, because it helps spread or get YouTube to pick the video up and spread it around through the algorithm a little bit more. So, guys, hey, right on. Thank you, Glenn, for joining the channel here. I'm trying to be a little bit better for the channel here. It's a new for me, the membership to the channel. It's only $1 a month. You get first access to all my videos that I do, so I post those up hours early for you, so you get to be like exclusively watch those videos. And then I'm going to set up for the collective, which is like a higher ranking membership, to try and bring in like a community of people who are dead serious on some of this stuff, who really want to break down, get into like maybe some roundtable discussions, stuff like that. So there'll be a concentrated like collective group that we can do, like, maybe Zoom meetings, or however we want to do it. So I'm trying to figure out this membership thing. It kind of just popped up, and I started it and then realized, oh man, what do I do with this thing? So thank you so much if you have joined the channel. Like I said, it's $1 a month. You get first access to the videos, and you get to support the Uneducated Economist. So that's what we're really all about, right? But I do thank you, Glenn. That's really cool of you. All right. Hey, Glenn, thanks and welcome. Let's see here. Gosh, I can hardly read. Okay, thanks, Simon, for having Mike and the Night on. Yeah, we're gonna be posting that one. Thank you, Lord Humongous. That's cool seeing you up in here. Yeah, Mike and I talked for about an hour yesterday, and it was a lot of fun. Mike is such a great guy, and he knows so much about the housing market when it comes to like the Canadian real estate market and stuff. It is a lot of fun to talk with Mike. He's a very excited dude, and he's really passionate about what he talks about. So we had a great conversation. We'll probably post that video, I'm thinking tomorrow afternoon or something. Hey, I got another join there. Thank you so much, Isaac, for joining in on the membership as well. Very cool of you. Port out of bottle. Huh. I'm not. Supporting each another is better than supporting them. Yeah, and that is very true. Like, when I started this channel, I was just putting videos out, just because I wanted to put videos out and have a discussion. And it was the viewers out there who were like, hey man, you're working pretty hard on these things. Why don't you put a PayPal out there for us to tip you on? And I was like, really? You guys really want to like send me money? Like, I was so taken back. I'm like, wow, that is so encouraging. Like, I mean, I was just like, I couldn't believe that somebody wanted to take the time to do that for me. And so I put the PayPal out there, and I was amazed on how many people were like so appreciative. Like, here's $5, here's $10, here's a handful of dollars. Some people sent me like a lot of money, and I didn't know, like, this is before the money, like, from the ad revenue or anything happened, you know? And I'm like, I'm showing my family, I'm like, look at the support that I'm getting for my channel, you know? And they were all taken back by it too. And I'm like, you know, guys, I've never done anything like, you know, had something like this to do this with, but let's go out to eat. Let's go get some ice cream. Let's go get Chinese food. And that's what I use that PayPal money for, is to take the family out. And I tell you, they know it. They appreciate it when they see that PayPal card come out. They know it came from you, the fans. That's where they're able to get the ice cream or something from. So you know, it's a neat lesson to not only teach the kids, but to also, you know, to also have that support from you guys and to be able to share it with the family like that. I just can't thank you enough, because like I said, that was something that I never really had in my family before, and now we get to do that every once in a while. So you guys are great. Did I see another one? You guys are just loading up there on the membership. Thank you so much there. Trio Legend. Oh, that's what that was. Okay, Trio Legend was your handle. I get it. All right. Who's your favorite character on Trailer Park Boys? You know, I don't know, like, I guess I have to go for Bubbles. Like, I like Bubbles simply because he's the one who actually is like, you know, he's the one who actually is like got the logic behind it. He's the only one who is just like, Jesus, Julian, get your shit together so we can get this thing done right. You know, he's the only one who's like actually thinking, like, caring about the guys to not go over the top, to not get in too much trouble, you know, whatever. So I just love Bubbles' character. But then, you know, really Julian is the thinker of the thing. Like Ricky, you know, he's always trying to come up with ideas about doing something, but he screws it all up. Julian is the real business guy. He's the one who has that mindset of being like constantly thinking of the next business venture, the next thing to make a dollar with, you know. He's always like kind of scheming on things. So I guess it would be like Bubbles and then Julian. Yeah. All right. And then, you know, I mean, honestly, Leahy, I mean, as far as like, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think that he's my favorite character, but man, Leahy, I mean, yeah, that's the best character right there. I had a clapper, don't know what happened to it. Bubbles has the clap light in his shed, yeah. That's hilarious. I just watched Trailer Park Boys. All right, cool. They are putting anti-theft devices on meat in New York and California. Wow, really? Well, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, you know, one of the things that we're gonna start seeing a lot more of is food deserts. You know, if it gets down to the situation right there where you can't even have the food in the store without getting it just straight up stolen, then how are you gonna, like, you know, distribute food out to people without it just turning into just a chaotic mess? Or, you know, that's another thing. Like, if it's constantly stolen, you got to think that's the profit margin. That's another reason why the prices of food go up, is because a lot of it is just straight up stolen. Um, it's not going to be easy for food. I mean, like, food is something that I think a lot about, right? So my wife works at a grocery, or works at a co-op grocery. So there's you know, we have like access to a lot of the better deals. Like when things go on sale, we're like the first ones to know about it and stuff like that, because, you know, you're right there. And so this is the type of thing that I like look towards, is like, how much access to food do I have? What do I need to do in order to preserve food? What is it that is going to be like everybody else's idea of what they're going to do to try and get food? These are the things you have to think about quite a bit, and is going to be very scary. You know, the scariest part about it isn't for the rich. The rich are going to eat, right? The rich eat. They have food. It's everybody else that suffers with it, because there's simply not going to be enough to go around when it comes to the worldwide hunger. It's not like here in the United States, we'll have the food. It's going to be expensive for people. But the famine that we're going to see go around the world is going to be quite bad. I mean, it's already kicking up, and it's going to grow more intense, especially like considering some of the issues like with the fertilizers that are not being distributed and stuff. It's going to get tough. So I try and encourage people to try and secure your food now. Like, I've told people, I don't know how many times, to get canning supplies. Canning supplies is going to be the best thing that you can do to try and save to save food. Simply because you don't need electricity to keep it frozen, and you don't really need to, like, with canning, you don't need to like store 6 years of food or something like that. If you have lids and rings and you have access to food that you can preserve, well, then you can just kind of rotate through your stuff. Like, a problem will be is that, like, somebody will come to you all of a sudden and say, like, here's 100 pounds of fish. Like, what do you do with 100 pounds of fish? If you don't know how to can that up, you're really only going to be able to consume so much of it, and then the rest of it gets wasted. But if you have the capabilities of taking that fish and canning it right away, well, then now you can preserve it for however long you need to. And that's going to be like a really critical skill for a lot of people going into the future. That's the one thing that I would definitely suggest for people is to do canning and learn that skill and get the supplies. All right, it's not having the food, it's having the means to protect it. Starving people will kill for food. I could not agree more. And that's what's sad about it, is that once people go hungry and they lose it, they will kill for food. It's sad to think. So protecting food is going to be a critical thing as well. That's why I suggested people get, if you have access to it and you can do it, I would go out and get a Ruger 1022. It's by far the simplest rifle. It's not something that is like, it's not some kind of crazy weapon that you're going to go on like fighting with or something, but it'll stop somebody from coming to the door. You can use it for survival purposes. It will kill a deer. You can carry 500 rounds in your pockets of your pants, like of your jeans. So canning supplies and a 1022. That's what you need. That's what the Uneducated Economist says you need to survive the zombie apocalypse with, is canning supplies and a 1022. All right, what time is it? I think I gotta go, guys. Yep, it's getting on to 5:30. I gotta go pick up my boy here in 15 minutes. I carry a 44 mag in the wasteland. Yeah, I used to have a 44 Magnum. It was a badass revolver that kicked like hell, but what did I end up doing with that? I think I traded it. No, I sold it off for Christmas. I needed Christmas money. That's what I did with it. All righty. Good night, Lord Humongous. Good night, All-Nighter. Good night to everybody who joined the membership, man. Thank you so much. Thank you, MetaMax, for the I don't know, where is that 400? Where's that? I'm not sure where that is. But thank you so much for the super chat or the super sticker. You guys are so awesome, so supportive, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you all hanging out with me and being part of the Uneducated Economist as we learn and try and figure out what it is that's going on here in the economy so we can make the best decisions for ourselves and our family. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.